there's a lot at stake today in America. And when this whole thing happened, of course, we've now seen, as the fog is lifting, how media has just fanned the flames of panic, largely for political reasons. I understand that COVID-19, like other flus that cycle through our society year after year, they're dangerous to some people. And people with ill health, elderly people, have died. And of course, we're all sorry for all of that. But behind that veneer, there's been a lot of ugly stuff that have happened. And much of it is illegal. Because the highest laws in our land are in this little book. And there's not a single elected official that are not beholden to these laws. It's also good to have Dr. Joe Cassidy here, who was the health officer for many years. Stand up, Dr. Joe Cassidy. We honor you, my friend. So anyway, you know, we have copies of these for you. I have real compassion for a lot of leaders. I know people are trying to do what they think is right. But what we really need is to understand how the lines lay in the United States of America and who answers to who. I circulated last week a chart off a government website of the government of these United States. And, you know, it didn't go up to the president. It just kept going right up to this document, the Constitution of the United States of America. And so we have a constitutional expert here, and I just want to thank JC and KrisAnne Hall for flying out here. They were busy people, and I got a hold of them, and they reminded me that they were busy people. And I said, shush, buy yourself a ticket and get out here. I said, KrisAnne, you were born for this. Come on out here and help us. And they came. So happy to have them here. And where have they gone? I hope they didn't just go out to pizza. Oh, there they are, standing in the back. Y'all come on up here. This is JC and KrisAnne Hall with their Liberty Addict shirts on. Awesome. Let's hear it for everybody. Stand up and thank them for coming out here. Spur of the moment. You guys take it away. There you go.
Amen. Appreciate the good welcome. Appreciate being back here. Been quite a few times. I have family roots down in Bakersfield area where my dad is from, and all his family moved to way back in 1800s, somewhere thereabouts. But praise the Lord. How many believe that liberty is a gift from God? Yeah. You know, and even for non-believers, non-religious folks, you still have to admit that you have liberty. It's your inherent right by the nature of your being. In other words, nobody has a right to own you. Amen. I don't belong to another person. I'm not property of the government. The government doesn't give us our rights. Amen. We are born with them. And we instituted government for the sole purpose of protecting those rights. And we're both military veterans and swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution. As you guys know, that oath never expires. And I just want to say this. It gets under my skin when I hear people in positions of representation say, I took an oath to keep people safe. I took an oath to protect people. Obviously, you weren't listening when you took your oath. That is not what the oath says. That's not your job. That's not your oath. And you're going to learn some of that tonight. But we appreciate being here. I have the task of introducing my wife real quick. Prettiest lady I know. But for those of you who don't know, KrisAnne Hall, she's a constitutional attorney, Army veteran. She's from St. Louis, Missouri. Don't hold that against her. And one of the redeeming qualities is she graduated from University of Florida School of Law. Go Gators. And worked as a state prosecutor. Maybe you call them district attorneys out here. I don't know. But worked as a prosecutor for about a decade. Then worked for a prominent nonprofit law firm defending First Amendment rights and religious liberty all over the nation. And went back to the state attorney's office, had a crazy leftist, had been elected and ended up this, I don't want to tell that long story, but ended up being fired for teaching the Constitution on her own time. And what the enemy meant for evil, God meant for good. We've been doing that ever since. God has performed miracle after miracle for 10 years to keep us going. And I'm really encouraged. I know we're seeing, craziness, but I really think that's a good thing. It's a double-edged sword, right? I'm upset about what I'm seeing, while at the same time I'm happy about what I'm seeing. Because how many know too many people were asleep? Too many people were comfortable. And we've been trying to teach this for 10 years. And I tell you, nothing, you can teach all day, nothing gets somebody's attention like getting punched in the mouth. And so I'm kind of glad on the one hand, keep going, keep pushing, because more people are standing up and pushing back. And we need more people to stand up and push back and finally feel that, not just say it, but feel that I've had enough of this. And more importantly, we need those that have taken that oath to stand in the gap for the residents of their county and their state. So with no further ado, my dear wife, KrisAnne Hall, she's going to teach you all about that idea.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their governor endowed by the Supreme Court, endowed by Donald Trump, endowed by our Creator, with certain inalienable rights. Certain, and you ought to be certain. You ought to be certain that among these rights, sometimes because we do such a bad job teaching in our government schools these days, and I can get an amen for that, please. We spend so much time teaching stuff that just doesn't matter. We major on the minors and forget the important stuff, like language and grammar and the meaning of words. But you understand the progressive education system is about not assigning meaning to anything. There's no absolutes about anything. There's no meaning to anything. Do you realize who that benefits? Not us. The people with power. Samuel Adams said, no people will tamely surrender their liberties nor be easily subdued when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved. He said, but on the contrary, when the people become universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, they will sink underneath their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders. See, we don't have an ISIS crisis in America. Funny how that just dominated everything for a really long time, and now it's like, poof. Where'd they go? I'm sure they're where they were when we were freaking out about them. They haven't gone anywhere. We don't have a foreign invasion problem in America. Oh, that got too silent. Because you don't understand what I'm saying. That's why I got quiet. We don't have a foreign invasion problem in America. We have a knowledge and virtue problem in America. We have a courage crisis in America. We wouldn't have problems with borders if people had knowledge and virtue and courage. We wouldn't have problems with foreign terrorists if the American people had knowledge and virtue and courage. But courage comes from knowledge. And we've been deliberately kept dumb, like the Egyptian pharaohs of the day of old that made it outlawed for the people to learn to read and write, so that the only information that the people ever got came from the ivory towers. We have been duped. We have been deceived into believing that our constitutions are too difficult for us to understand. Don't even bother reading it. Don't even bother trying. Because you see, I went to law school. And you know what that means? That means after high school, I had 7 more years of school. And unless you have 7 more years of school, then you can't possibly know what shall not means. So this is going to feel a little weird, but I want everybody to stand up and shake off the bonds. Shake off the chains. Shake it off. Shake off the brainwashing. Get rid of it. Shake off the deception. Get rid of it. They are bondage on your soul. All right, you can sit down now. When you feel adequately freed, you can sit down. Because here's the thing, people ask me all the time. KrisAnne, how can my governor do this? KrisAnne, how can my county commissioners do this? KrisAnne, how can my police chief do this? Do you know what my answer is? Because you let them. Because you let them. Do you want to know? Jefferson said, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Do you know what self-evident means? That means they are truths that have proven themselves to be true by repetition over history through human nature. There's another word I like to use. It's called axiomatic, only because it sounds really big. It sounds important. There's one of these truths. You know what that truth is? That tyrants will be tyrants as long as you let them. And people will live in tyranny until they get tired of it. So until you get tired of living in the tyranny, until you get, and I don't mean, man, I just hate going to the grocery store wearing my mask and not being able to buy any toilet paper. That's not tired of tyranny. until we get tired of tyranny, we will never be free. So I'm not gonna stoke it for you, because I think what happens with knowledge, that's why Samuel Adams said what he said, what happens with knowledge is that knowledge stokes itself. It's the fire that burns in you. It inspires, it encourages, it ignites. Abigail Adams said, we see the liberty ignite, and we watch as it catches from soul to soul. So I'm going to sort of do something a little bit different today. Because I got a little pet peeve. I got a lot of them, ask my husband. But I got one that's really kind of big. And it's when people sit around and wait for somebody else to do something for them. And the biggest problem I have with that is when the people of a sovereign state sit back and want the federal government to fix all our problems. It is a sedative to the people. It is an opiate of the masses. Oh, let's file a petition with the White House and Donald Trump will come fix it. Oh, wait a minute, we got to get A.G. Barr to come bring the Department of Justice in to fix our governor. It is the opiate of the masses, I'm telling you, because it gives people a false hope, a dangerous direction, that it's somehow the purview of the federal government to come govern over your government. How many people do you know that are like, well, if we can just get Donald Trump to do... How many of you heard that? Oh, if we can just get A.G. Barr to do this. How many of you heard that? It's not their job. It's not their job. And let me tell you what, you don't want it to be their job. Because the minute it is their job, you no longer live in a constitutional republic. You live in a federal kingdom. You see, the power was never delegated to the President of the United States, whether he be Barack Obama or Donald Trump, to come and fix what's wrong in your state. The president isn't delegated 95% of the power that they exercise today anyway, and this is just one more of them. And for us to ask the president to do that, we are actually engaging in our own downfall, because we are demanding that the president stop being a president and start being a king. $40 million people. There are 40 million people in the state of California. How does one man rule over 40 million people? Even when your Constitution says he can't. How does one man rule over 40 million people? Because they let him. And I want you to see something. Your governor looks more like a monarch than a representative. But when we look to the federal government to fix our problems, all we're doing is trading out kings. So we're going to teach tonight what it is the duty of the state government to secure your rights. Because you see, you don't need a U.S. Bill of Rights to be enforced on your state, for your state to have a duty to secure your rights. Let me ask you a question. It's a really, really easy question. So easy you're going to think it's a trick question. But I'm telling you, it ain't a trick question. So I want you to answer loud and proud. Which came first, the states or the federal government? Which came first, the states or the federal government? You got to be certain of that now. Do you know, like 13 years before the Constitution that we have today, our states existed? How many people do you know think they couldn't live 13 minutes without the federal government now? Samuel Adams said, because this is what we're talking about here today, I want you to realize, my husband got up here, he told you, look, these are natural rights. These are not constitutional rights. These are not government-given rights. These are natural rights, rights that you're born with. I like to say the obvious out loud sometimes because I think sometimes we miss it. Do you realize that if your rights come from government, that means every person is born a slave until the government, in its mercy and grace, gives us freedom? That's what we're saying. When we sit around and we beg the governor to bestow upon us the authority, the ability to do what is our natural right to do, what we're saying is, my children and I were all born slaves, and if it weren't for the governor, we'd still be slaves. So you just got to see. You just got to see the obvious. Because it'll always be somebody else's fight until you get punched in the face. Samuel Adams said, among the natural rights of the colonists. Now, I'm a historical nerd, and so I always kind of chuckle when he says among the natural rights of the colonists. Do you realize this man is talking about people who were considered subjects to a king? And he's talking about subjects to a king having natural rights. Rights above the king. Yet here we are in the Constitutional Republic of California, and we act like we got less rights than people who were subjects to a king. He says, among the natural rights of the colonists are these: first life, second liberty, third property, together. Number 4, with the right to support and defend them in the best manner they can. He says these are evident branches of the first law of nature, the duty of self-preservation. Does government give you life? Then you don't owe your life to government. I'm not feeling that. Does government give you life? No. Then you don't owe your life to government. No. Who gives you life? God. Then you owe your life to God. Amen. Do you know what that first duty is? Self-preservation. So you can live your life for the one who gave it to you. God didn't create us to crawl in the muck and the mire, begging for crumbs from the table. Jesus did not die on the cross, so we were left with scraps. We were made heirs to a king. Heirs to a king. What is an heir to a king? A prince. Does a prince or a princess crawl on the floor and beg for scraps? then we got to stop doing that. We got to live with an uprighteous spine and realize where we come from and who we owe. Because his name ain't Newsom. Our states were born July 2nd, 1776. Somebody's like, wait a minute, does she have that date wrong? No. Our states were born July 2nd, 1776, with the ratification of the Lee Resolution through the First Continental Congress. The Lee Resolution, a resolution written by a representative of the colony of Virginia by the name of Richard Henry Lee. And he drafted a 3-step process for our colonies to become states. What's amazing is this first paragraph, because I have the Lee Resolution up there. This first paragraph made it to the Declaration of Independence because the Declaration of Independence didn't create our independence. It simply declared what we had done 2 days prior. So on July 2nd, 1776, the Continental Congress met. They debated, they voted, and they ratified the Lee Resolution into law. Our states our colonies ceased being colonies and began being states by a legal congressional act. Just as legally binding as anything that our Congress does today that's constitutional. John Adams would write home to his wife Abigail on July 3rd and say, July 2nd is an epic day in America where Americans will celebrate their independence forever. Do you know it wasn't until the mid-1800s that we started celebrating our independence on July 4th? Now, you can look at this first paragraph because we're going to see it again, but I want us to realize our states became states without the blessing of a president of the United States. And what is the job of the states? Just simply to secure the rights of the people. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these rights, that word among these means I'm about to give you a list, but it's not complete. I'm about to give you a list, but it's not complete. It's just a few things. There's more, but I want you to see maybe the top 3. But I don't want you to think that's all there is. Among these rights, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. When the power flows from the governor to the people, it is not a just government. When the power flows from the Supreme Court to the people, it is not a just government. It is only a just government when all power in government is derived from the people, which means those in government cannot do by law what I can't do legally myself. Can I show up as KrisAnne Hall and demand that Pastor Dave shut his church down? Can I do that legally? Then neither can your governor. Do you realize that if I showed up at your business and shut down your business by gunpoint or by threat of force, they would charge me with felony grand theft. If it's grand theft for me to shut down your private business, it's grand theft for your governor too. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time talking about the California Constitution today. Because here's what I want to do. I don't know if I got the power, Pastor. I got the heart, but I don't know if I got the power. I want to end your love affair with the federal government today. Pray for me, Pastor. I don't know if I have the power, but I have the heart. Because until we set aside this insane love affair that we have, this infatuation with the federal government, we will never have the proper perspective to turn our lives around and let our children live free. We, therefore, the representatives, if you've got your pocket constitution, by the way, this is the Declaration of Independence. This is the last paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. If you have the pocket constitution with Washington on the front, it's on page 38. This, by the way, is the first clause of the Lee Resolution, and I want to show you something. Part of it is anyway. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America and General Congress assembled appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by the authority of the good what? King? People. That is an extension of the principle that we are born free. You see, we decided we didn't have to ask the king's permission to be free. We simply had to, we just simply had to step up and declare it. Come on now. You don't need to ask your governor for the right to be free. You were born free. You need to step up and declare it. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good, because you need to be uncomfortable. Look at this. By the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare. See, we didn't become independent on July 4th. We simply published and declared what we did 2 days before that. That these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent. We're not colonies anymore, people. We are free and independent states. A reflection of the free and independent people. A reflection of the free and independent people that created those states. See, if you're not free, then neither is your state. Because your government can't live in a state of existence that does not first come from you. It's upside down. We are living in an upside down world. We are absolved from all allegiance to the British crown. And that all our political connection between us and the state of Great Britain is totally and completely dissolved. Do you know what we said 244 years ago? Not just we're free from Great Britain. Not just we're totally free from Great Britain. Do you know what we declared 244 years ago? We are free from kings forever. Free from kings forever. Yet no people will tamely surrender their liberties nor be easily subdued when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved. We've lost our knowledge. We've lost our virtue. We've forgotten that 244 years ago, we declared no more kings. And now what we have are governors that look more like monarchs than they do representatives of the people. And that's because we, the people, have become inattentive. We've been pacified in prosperity. We've been lazy in luxury. We've become complacent and compliant in our comfort, clinging to inglorious ease more than the tumults of liberty. So this, I know you can't see that, so I'm going to read it to you. I'm standing here, I can't see it. But then I can't see my cell phone either unless it's out here these days. This is from your California Constitution. This is the oath of office. I wonder how many Californians could recite the oath of office. Because you see, it's not just words. It's a promise. Those you've trusted with a promise. How do you make people keep a promise if you don't even know what that promise is? You see, there's some certain truths about government. Number one, those in government will do a lot of things when you're not looking. You know what the second truth is? They won't do anything you want them to do unless you make them. So we've checked out. But it's because we don't know. I have a great friend in Long Island. She's like my grandma wisdom. And she says these things that are just amazing. She says, you know, KrisAnne, the problem is people just don't know what they don't know. But that's why we got to change that. Right? We are the preachers of the gospel. Each and every one of us. What does that word gospel mean? Good news. Isn't it good news that you're born free? Isn't it good news that everybody that runs for office makes a promise to you? I mean, not just a promise where they raise their right hand. That is a contract. That is a throwback from the old contract days. They've made a covenant with you. And then they sanctify that covenant with the only power that's higher than we are to them by putting their hand on the Bible. They make a covenant with us with their hand and then place their hand on the Bible and make a covenant with the one who made us. And when they don't keep their promise, they're not just breaking their promise to us, they're breaking their promise to God. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think you have to be a Christian to be an American. Because we don't need government and religion to be married. Because that's always bad news. I mean, I got a whole class on religious liberty. I think I taught it the last time I was here. If you haven't seen my class on religious liberty, then maybe you don't know why that's bad news, but it's always bad. Always bad. But you got to understand that there's a higher power than government. And if you don't understand there's a higher power than government, then you're not fit to govern. And that's the bottom line. So this oath says, I, state your name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge my duties upon which I am about to enter. And then it goes into parties. I'm just going to stick with that first paragraph, though. Anybody want to guess at what word is missing there? I mean, there's a bunch of words missing, but. Did you notice that there is no allegiance to enforce the law? How many of you have come across officers who say, well, I took an oath to enforce the law? There is not a single person in the state of California that took an oath to enforce the law. Your oath is to the Constitution of the United States and to the Constitution of the state of California. Now, if those laws are made in pursuance to the Constitution of the California, then you have to support and defend them. But here's the kicker. If they're not made in pursuance to the Constitution of the California, you are not to enforce them. And you don't need a judge to tell you that. You need some reading glasses to tell you that. And if you can't make that decision, then maybe you'd better review that oath you took. Because you made a promise to the people, a really big, strong promise, without mental reservation or purpose of evasion, true faith and allegiance. If you can't keep that promise, then maybe you need to find a new job. Unless, of course, you want to remedy the error and educate yourself and find out what that means. Did you notice that there's no oath to the governor? Did you know the governor takes this oath? Which is really important. Your county commissioners take this oath. Your sheriff takes this oath. Your sheriff's deputies take this oath. Not to enforce the law, but to defend the constitutions. And I just have found, because I used to teach at the academy in Florida, that our officers just don't know what they don't know. And unfortunately, they get kind of defensive about it. My husband will tell you. I've had officers tell me, I know the Constitution better than any lawyer. I've written thousands of police reports. My bad. California Constitution, Article 1, Section 1. All people are by nature free. Are you catching that? See, your California Constitution's already told you what we've been talking about. You're not born a slave. You're born free. Naturally free. Right? All people are by nature free and independent and have inalienable rights. Oh, there's those fun legal words. Among these. Among these are enjoying and defending. Can you catch that one? Enjoying and defending life and liberty. Acquiring, possessing, and protecting property. I should be having some kind of hallelujah choir hanging right now, man. Pursuing, obtaining safety, happiness, and privacy. Now let us be clear here. Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution is not describing the role of government. Don't get confused. Article 1, Section 1 of the California Constitution is not describing the role of government. It is describing your natural and alienable rights. It is your right to secure your safety, not the government's right. Did you notice that oath did not say, I solemnly swear to keep the people of California safe? It did not say, I solemnly swear to keep the people of California safe from a COVID virus. It is your duty, your individual, independent, free duty and right to do this stuff yourself. You know, I have to repent for you guys for just a second. Because this isn't the first time that I've strolled through the California Constitution. And I was giving you guys a really bad rap, and I just want to apologize. Because you see, the California Constitution does not have an enumeration that declares that you have a right to keep and bear arms. It doesn't. And I thought, how in the heck did they do that? How did they get away with that? Until I sat down and started studying this for this evening. You see, you don't need an enumeration in your California Constitution to declare that you have a right to keep and bear arms. Because number one, your right to keep and bear arms does not come from the California Constitution. And Article 1, Section 1 of the California Constitution already declares you have a right to keep and bear arms because you have a natural and unalienable right to defend your life, your liberty, and your property. You don't need those words because you possess a natural right to do those things. Because you see, here's the thing we miss. If you don't have a natural right to keep and bear arms, if you don't have a natural right to defend your life, your liberty, and your property with whatever manner is necessary, then you're not free. You're not free. Because you see, if you don't have a right to keep and bear arms to defend your life, your liberty, and your property, as Article 1, Section 1 says you have a natural and alienable right to do, then you are enslaved to whomever you're waiting to come and protect you. Because whomever is coming to protect you actually owns your life. Because at that moment, when it's their decision to protect you or not, they're placing a value on your life. And James Madison says that you own what you value. What you value is your property. And so when you have to wait for somebody to show up to protect you, to defend your life, your liberty, and your property, those defenders own your life. Because at any moment they could say, you know what, it's just too dangerous for me to do that. My life is more valuable than theirs. And then you're a slave. Article 1, Section 1 declares your natural right to defend yourself. Now, let me ask you a question. My goodness, I don't think I'm going to get through this tonight. Let me ask you a question. If you have an inalienable, natural right to not simply acquire, not simply possess, but you have an inalienable, natural right to protect your property, then how can the governor order your business shut down? Because he took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of California. And the Constitution of California says you have a right to protect your property. Your business is your property. And by taking your business and shutting your business down, what he's saying is you don't have a right to protect your property. And that very order is in defiance to the Constitution of the state of California, which is a violation of his oath. I want you to think about these violations. Article 1, Section 4. You have an inalienable natural right to the free exercise and enjoyment of religion without discrimination or preference are guaranteed. Guaranteed. The liberty of conscience does not excuse acts that are licentious or inconsistent with the peace or safety of the state. Do you know what happens when we forget what words mean? Do you know what that clause means? You can't sacrifice babies as a matter of your religion. It doesn't mean that the governor can shut your church down because they're afraid of the flu. That's not what safety means. How ironic is it that we outlaw, I'm going to go to meddling now, Pastor. We outlaw human sacrifice as a matter of religion, but with tax dollars fund the murder of babies in the womb. Article 1, Section 2. I sort of switched these around a little bit because everybody's used to the First Amendment in the U.S. Constitution: freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, the right to peaceably assemble, the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. You have all of those in the California Constitution. They're just in a different order. So I try to put them in order for you this way. Maybe easier to remember. Section 2. Every person may freely speak, write, and publish his or her statements on all subjects, being responsible for the abuse of this right. A law may not restrain or abridge the liberty of speech or press. The people have the right to instruct their representatives, petition the government for redress of grievances, and assemble freely to consult for the common good. That's your Constitution, to which it declares you have an inalienable, natural right, to which everyone in government takes an oath to support and defend without mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So when your governor says you don't have the right to peaceably assemble unless you do it on their terms, that's in contradiction to your Constitution and a violation of their oath. And hey, it isn't just the oath of the governor. Your police chief takes that oath. Your police officers take that oath. Your sheriff takes that oath. Their deputies take that oath. And that means anybody who enforces those orders from the governor are also violating their oath and the Constitution. The Supreme Court is very clear about this right to peaceably assemble. I just wanted to share a couple of cases with you because I'm seeing this now. All right, so these are, I don't usually do Supreme Court cases because we get too attached to the Supreme Court as, you know, the oligarch that tells us what's right and what's wrong, what's our rights and not our rights. But you see, we have these people that I call federal supremacists. And these are their God. And so if I can use their God to illustrate where they're going wrong, that's probably more powerful than even using the Constitution of the state of California, because they don't have any faith in that. Arresting, convicting, and punishing protesters who are peacefully assembled where there was no violence or threat on their part is a violation of free speech, free assembly, and freedom to petition. peaceful demonstrators may not be prosecuted for disorderly conduct. So saith the Supreme Court. Local government must provide police in such numbers as in their professional and judgment are required to afford adequate protection to the peaceful protesters. And Jefferson said, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. By the way, this is not a protest. This is a riot. This is criminal mischief. This is vandalism. This is property destruction, just in case you might be confused there, because the media is confused. I don't want you to be confused, because they're confused, okay? I heard Greta Van Susteren look out on a crowd like this and say, well, what are the officers supposed to do? I mean, those people have a right to protest too. That is not a protest. That is criminal activity. Our officers do not have the authority to violate our rights by arresting peaceful protesters, but they have an obligation to their promise to stop criminal behavior, because that behavior is infringing on the rights and the property of the people they swore to protect. Supreme Court. A police officer has the duty to not ratify and effectuate a heckler's veto, nor may he join a moiling mob intent on suppressing ideas. He must take reasonable actions to protect from violence persons exercising their constitutional rights. Now, I don't like that phrase, constitutional rights, but that's a whole nother class. They're the Supreme Court. They don't always get the Constitution right, so we got to give them a break. They think that our rights come from them. But here we have it. When our officers shut down our peaceful protests, they're doing what the Supreme Court has said is a violation of our rights since 1975. Even if that moiling mob comes from the state capitol. Local government, I already said that one. Local government must provide police in such numbers as their professional judgment are required to afford adequate protection to peaceful protesters. Article 1, Section 7. A person may not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law or denied equal protection of the law. Maybe I need to say that one again. A person may not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law or denied equal protection of the laws. These safer-at-home orders violate both of those things. When they shut down your business, they are taking your property. When they shut down your business, they're taking your property. I had one legislator tell me, well, KrisAnne, you know that's not the same thing. It's just temporary for a limited time because we have to do this to keep people safe. I said, oh, cool. I like that definition, dude. Because I know you drive a really nice car. So next time, I said, tomorrow I'm going to come over to your house and I'm going to take your car from you. But I'm not stealing it because I'm only going to take it temporarily for a short period of time as long as I need it. And by the way, how comforting is the whole temporary thing when you have no idea when that end is coming? Because when you have no idea when that end is coming, it's not temporary, it's permanent. And you have a right to due process. But you have a right to equal protection under the law. So if the governor says Walmart can stay open, but your business cannot, that's a violation of equal protection under the law. In Florida, we had a police chief getting haircuts for all his officers, while the governor had all the hairdressers out of work. Well, we have an image to keep up. Equal protection under the law, huh? Contact tracing. We're going to talk about that today. But this is another Supreme Court case, by the way. This case has just slipped my brain, and I can't read it. I'm going to come up here. Oh my goodness, KrisAnne's not perfect. Carpenter. This is Carpenter v. U.S. Do you know what contact tracing is supposed to be doing? Do you know how they plan on doing it? They plan on using your cell phone, GPS, to track and identify your location. Problem is, under Carpenter v. U.S., the Supreme Court has already said you can't do that. And this, do I have any attorneys in the room? You see, when you read case law, you're always taking cases that look a little bit like what you've got, and you're trying to fit them in and take the arguments and make them work. Rarely do you ever get a gem where you don't have to do anything. Carpenter is that gem. See, here's what was happening. We had a police force using geo-trackers on people's cars and saying they didn't need a warrant for that. Carpenter v. U.S. We had police officers using cell tower data to track people without a warrant. And here's what they said. Well, we're not getting that information from the cell phone provider. We're getting it from somebody the cell phone provider sold that data to. It's called the third party exception. And they said, since we're getting it from the third party, then the people don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy in their personal data that's in the possession of a third party. See, maybe they have an expectation of privacy in their cell phone data when Verizon has it. But if Verizon sells it to somebody else, then that expectation of privacy goes away. That's what they said. And the Supreme Court in Carpenter v. U.S. said, no, I'm sorry, we can't do that. I'm sorry, we can't do that. Because everything we do is digital today. And we can't let you launder the people's rights out of their possession through third parties. So your state, your county's going to say, oh, we're not getting this cell data from your cell phone provider. We're getting it from the data experts. You see, here's what's happening. The hospitals and the medical facilities are getting that data from the cell phone providers, right? Because it's their job to monitor the spread of the infection so our hospitals don't get overloaded. And so then the officers say, the government says, your county, the state will say, well, we're getting it from the hospital, so there's no expectation of privacy there. It's a third party. And that's where Carpenter tells us, no, they can't do that. Carpenter says you have to have a warrant to do that. That means for them to engage in contact tracing like this, they either have to have express permission from every single person that they track, or they have to have a warrant for every single person. And if they don't, guess what happens? You have to pay for a lawsuit. Oh, maybe you don't get that. Because when the government violates your rights, somebody's going to sue them. And when they sue them with a case as settled as this, they're going to lose. But they don't care. It's not their money. It's yours. So they operate on somebody else's wallet, and they don't care, because what they're going to do, they're going to violate your rights. They're going to get what they want until somebody sues them, and then they sue them, and now you're on the pay. See, that's why you got to get started now to stop this stuff at your county level, so it never even gets started, so you don't have to pay some fat lawyer paycheck because the government's being reckless with your rights. A person may not be imprisoned in a civil action for debt or tort. That might be a little bit different for us to understand. But a tort is when you violate another person's liberty on a civil matter, right? Which would be if you... The governor's orders are civil orders. They're not criminal orders. Ordinances are like civil orders. They're not criminal. They can't put you in jail for not wearing a mask, because it's civil, not criminal. They can't put you in jail for keeping your business open, because that's civil, not criminal. And if they do that, there it goes, violates Article 1, Section 10. Oops, we bounced twice. Article 1, Section 13. How many of you know the Fourth Amendment in the U.S. Constitution? Article 1, Section 13 is your Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures may not be violated, and a warrant may not issue except on probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. That is so specific, there ought not be any questions. First off, you need to realize you're not free from all searches and seizures. The language says you're free from unreasonable ones. Now that's where the big heads get involved. And they all sit around and pull their Ivy League ignorance. And they say, well, you're not free from all searches and seizures, just unreasonable ones. So we need to get together in our think tanks, in our legal rooms, in our courtrooms, in our scholars, our professors, and we need to decide what is a reasonable search. And they actually made a definition. Billions of dollars of brain power. Billions of dollars of brain power determined that the definition of a reasonable search and seizure is what a reasonable person would find reasonable under reasonable circumstances. The problem is you don't need all that brain power, because it already tells you what a reasonable search and seizure is, right there in Article 1, Section 13. A reasonable search and seizure is one that has a warrant that's based upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, subject to due process, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. You see that little conjunction? Conjunction, junction, what's your function? Right? That little conjunction is one of the most powerful legal words we have. You see, that word is and. There's another conjunction that's not there, and that one is or. You see, if it said or, then it would be completely different, but it doesn't. It says and. And because it says and, in order to have a reasonable search and seizure, what we know because of that conjunction and, all 5 elements must be present at the exact same time. You don't have a reasonable search and seizure with 3 out of 5. You don't have a reasonable search and seizure with 4 out of 5. You don't have a reasonable search and seizure with 4.5 out of 5. Only 5 out of 5 makes a reasonable search and seizure. The other thing you need to realize, too, is that, or things to be seized, grammar matters, because there's some punctuation after that word seized. And what is that punctuation? Is it a comma? Is it a semicolon? No, it's a period. That means the thought is done, and there ain't no more. So guess what? It doesn't say, and things to be seized, comma, unless it's a matter of national emergency. Unless we're in a pandemic. Unless the governor can come up with a good enough excuse. There's a period there. And nothing else is a reasonable search and seizure. What I'd like to do is just do very, very quickly a little lesson on what that word property is. Because we say persons, houses, papers, and effects. Who knows what effects is? Yeah, I mean, really, what does that mean? It's just the catch-all for property. Right? Because you can't list everything. But James Madison says in an essay called Property. He actually wrote an essay in 1792 he titled Property. Because believe it or not, in 1792, our Congress was having problems with that word. So the 4th president of the United States, also known historically as the father of the Constitution, broke out the classroom and decided to teach our government what the word property means. Look at what he says. Government is instituted to protect property of every sort, as well that which lies in the various rights of the individuals, and that which the term particularly expresses. This being the end of government, that alone is a just government which impartially secures to every man whatever is his own. Impartially secures. Not Walmart can stay open, but mom and pop got to close. That is not impartial. That is the opposite of impartial. And since it's the opposite of impartial, then we also ought to know that that means you have an unjust government. Madison tells us property is that dominion which one man claims and exercises over the external things of the world in the exclusion of every other individual. It's the stuff you own, right? Your cell phone, your water bottle, your purse, your physical stuff. But Madison is going to teach us that property doesn't end there. There are 2 forms of property in this world, the physical and the non-physical. Look at what he says. In its larger and juster meaning, property embraces everything to which a man may attach a value and have a right. You see, your right to secure your property is in and of itself a property. Your right to peaceably assemble is in and of itself a property. And when the government denies you your property, it seizes your property, it seizes your effects, you no longer have a just government. He says you have a property in your land, your merchandise, your money. But you also have a property in your opinions, in the free communication of your opinions. That's property too. He says you have a property of peculiar value in your religious opinions and the profession and practice dictated by them. When they shut down your church, they're not just shutting down the physical property, they're shutting down the non-physical property of your rights. It is an illegal search and seizure of your non-physical property. When they tell you you can't go to the Capitol steps and peacefully protest, they are depriving you of your right to property, your right to petition for redress, your right to peaceably assemble is your property. You have a property very dear to you in the safety and liberty of your person. When the government says, we will vaccinate you with whatever means it takes. Yeah, you better come to my door with whatever means it takes. My husband said on our radio show the other day, I got a plan. You want to stick me? Then I get to stick you. But I get to go first. This is your property. It's your property. Now I'm going to move a little bit quicker now. You have a property in the free use of your faculties and the free choice of objects on which to employ them. That word faculties, well, that's another word. We don't know what that means. That word faculties is your imaginations, your gifts, what makes you unique, how you can take a piece of clay and turn it into a product. How you can fashion words and make books. How you have the skill to cut people's hair or to shave them a really nice beard or to make a painting. Maybe you have a skill to make soap, or maybe you have a skill to be a salesperson. That's your faculty. It's your property to be a business owner above and beyond the walls. It's not just the walls that are your property. It's the ingenuity it took to fill those walls that are your property as well. This is not a just government, nor is property secure under it, where the property which one man has in his personal safety and personal liberty are violated by arbitrary seizures of one class of citizens for the service of the rest. Do you see that? Do you know how many nincompoops I've heard tell me, you don't have a right to infect me? You don't have the right to imprison me when I ain't sick. That is a seizure of my property in liberty for the service of others. And how dare you believe that people on ivory towers care more about you than I would your neighbor? I hate this fact that these people we've elected through our power, through our trust, look at us and say, we're stupid, we're inconsiderate, we're ignorant, and we're not moral enough to love our neighbors as ourselves without the government threatening to put us in jail first. Contact tracing. The other part of your contact tracing, they want to use infrared drones to fly through your neighborhoods to see the heat signatures inside your buildings to determine where the large gatherings are. So then they can send out the contact tracing brown shirts to come investigate how many people are there. This is another one of those gems, by the way. This is Kylo v. U.S., where the Supreme Court specifically says to look into a private building with infrared technology and see things that you can't see with the naked eye is an unlawful search without a warrant. So guess what? When they do that, who pays? Let's try that. When they do that, who pays? Article 1, Section 16, trial by jury is an inviolate right and shall be secured to all. But in civil cause, 3/4 of the jury may render a verdict. You have a right to a trial by jury as an inviolate right, which means if they're going to quarantine you and imprison you on house arrest, you have a right to a trial by jury before they can do that. You have a right to a trial by jury before they can do that. Technically, before they shut down your business, you were supposed to have a right to a trial by jury. Look at this one, Section 18. Private property may be taken or damaged for public use only when just compensation ascertained by a jury, unless waived. And that's waived by you, not by them. When they take your business and shut down your business, they're taking your business. You have a right to a trial by jury before they can put the lock on your door and put you in jail for not doing it. Trial by jury. This is a little bit, we'll skip over this because this is a little bit, come on, deep. These are all the definitions. Go and read that one. Article 3, Section 3. This is really, really important. The powers of state government are legislative, executive, and judicial. Now look what it says. Persons charged with the exercise of one power may not exercise either of the others except as permitted by this Constitution. Now maybe that doesn't make sense yet, so let's just keep going. We'll come up here. Article 4, the legislative power of the state shall be vested in the California Legislature, which consists of the Senate and Assembly. Did you see the legislative power there vested in the governor? Well, come on, back up again. The powers of the state government are legislative, executive, and judicial. Persons charged with the exercise of one power may not exercise either of the others except as permitted by this Constitution. Well, the legislative power, the lawmaking power, is vested in the legislative branch, not the governor. Because the governor's job, the supreme executive power of the state, is vested in the governor. Do you know what the governor's job is? Shall see the law is faithfully executed. Not make it. Not make it. He just executes it. And when he makes it, he's violating the Constitution, but he's violating one of the most fundamental principles of a constitutional republic, separation of powers. James Madison, quoting a political philosopher by the name of Montesquieu, said, "When the powers of legislative and executive are combined in one body or one person, liberty cannot survive." Do you know why the governor does not have lawmaking authority through your Constitution? Because he's not a king. Because a governor that executes the laws and writes the laws is a king. And 244 years ago, we said, no more kings. Subject, all right, this is our sheriff now. Okay? I'm going to talk to you a little bit about your sheriff now. Because your sheriff is a unique position in the state. Your sheriff is not a hireling of the governor. Your sheriff is not a hireling of the county. Nor is your sheriff at the mercy of the mayor. Your sheriff doesn't get a paycheck from anyone but you. Your sheriff is a constitutional officer with unique responsibility because your sheriff is the highest executive authority in your county. Your sheriff outranks the governor. He outranks the county. He outranks the city. He outranks the president of the United States. He outranks the president of the United States. He outranks the ATF. He outranks the EPA. He outranks the Department of Interior. He outranks the FDA, the USDA. He outranks them all. There is no agent in federal or state government that has the authority to exercise any power within your county without first obtaining your sheriff's permission. And I could take you on a historical lesson where that all begins in the year 844, but that's a whole nother class. You search it out. It's a conundrum for the people in power in California. They're complaining about it all the time. How do we change the power of the sheriff? Nobody governs over the power of the sheriff. Yeah, they do. You do. Your sheriff is a constitutionally elected officer, a representative of the people who works for you. And what is his number one duty according to his oath? To protect the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of California. You can make the argument that police officers have to enforce the law. It's a stretch because they take the same oath. But you can make that argument because they get their paycheck from the county or from the city. They actually have a boss. You can make that argument. It's a bad argument, but they can make that argument. But you cannot make that argument about your sheriff or the deputies because they don't get a paycheck from anybody but you. And their duty is to protect your rights. I threw this slide up here because I wanted you to see, because there's an argument brewing, and I need you to know. See, I'm not just here to teach you what you need to know. I'm here to teach you what your enemy doesn't want you to know. They're going to try to manipulate things, okay? I wouldn't be a good teacher if I didn't show you both sides, right? So here in Article 5, Section 13, and I found this in several articles as I was doing this, who governs the sheriff? Article 5, Section 13 says the Attorney General governs the sheriff. Only that's not what that says. That just simply says that the Attorney General can give cases to the sheriff to execute. Your sheriff does not take orders from the Attorney General. So don't let them take that clause and change, because I'm telling you, the office of the sheriff is the most powerful office, and they know it. Delaware got rid of the power of the sheriff. In Delaware, they amended the Constitution. The sheriffs in Delaware can't even arrest people anymore because the people were fundamentally ignorant, and they didn't know the protection that they were giving up. Now let me explain something to you. How many of you seeing all the violations of your Constitution? I'm not talking about the U.S. Constitution, I'm talking about the state Constitution, right? This is Alexander Hamilton. And he's teaching us a principle of constitutions. There is no position which depends on clearer principles than that every act of a delegated authority, that's what your governments operate on, delegated authority. You have delegated to government to do things. A temporary trust to those you've elected. There is no position which depends on clear principle that every act of a delegated authority contrary to the tenor of the commission under which it is exercised is void. Void. I mean, that's a pretty clear word, is it not? Void. But as if maybe it might have eluded somebody, he goes on. No legislative act, therefore, contrary to the Constitution, can be valid. And he's talking about proper government because legislators make laws, right? He's saying, look, even if the proper branch makes the law and the law is contrary to the Constitution, the law is null and void. But you add in there that you now have an executive governor making laws. Well, that's like twice null and void. That's like big time null and void, right? This is James Wilson. The power of the Constitution predominates. Anything, therefore, that shall be enacted, and you can put the legislative branch contrary to the Constitution, look at this one, will not have the force of law. If the legislators make a law that is contrary to the Constitution, it is no law at all. And if the governor makes a law or an order, can we talk about that for a second? Because you see, if an order can take your property, give you a fine, and put you in jail, what is the difference between an order and a law? Well, I'll tell you what the difference is. One is constitutional, and the other is not. One is lawful, and the other is illegal. And it is no force of law. And what obligation do a people in a society have to submit themselves to something that has no force of law? Just this one. Just this one. Just the one we're mentally shackled and we choose to enslave ourselves. Undelegated authority is null and void. So what's the response? It's called peaceful non-compliance. I don't like that word, civil disobedience, because I'm not being disobedient. It's the government that's being disobedient. It's the county, it's the governor, it's the city that's being disobedient to the supreme law of California. I am not being disobedient when I refuse to follow a law that is no law at all. I'm engaging in peaceful non-compliance. And peaceful non-compliance is not people acting lawlessly. Peaceful non-compliance is the people enforcing the supreme law of the state when the government is not following the law. We are wrapping it up now. You see, how different would our civil rights history be today if we had a sheriff that said, you know what, Miss Parks, that law is not a just law. And as a sheriff, I took an oath to support and defend the constitutions which secures in me a duty to secure your rights. Remember, what is the purpose of government? To secure these rights. How different would our civil rights history be if that sheriff had said, I took an oath, and it doesn't matter. I'm going to secure your rights. So you sit wherever you want, Miss Parks. I'm going to sit right next to you, and I'm going to escort you home. You see, the officers today that look at you and say, look, I'm just enforcing the law. What they're telling you is they would have put Rosa Parks in shackles and taken her to jail. That's exactly what they're saying. And if they would argue with you, right? No, I wouldn't have done that. Oh, so you admit then you have the authority to choose which laws to enforce and which ones not. You just don't think these are important enough. When they will shut down your business, when they will arrest you, when they will close down your only means of survival because they're just enforcing the law, they're telling you they would have put Rosa Parks in jail. And I was just enforcing the law. It didn't work in Nuremberg. So why would it work in California? This is Brad Rogers. Brad Rogers stood up to the FDA and the USDA and kicked them out of his county because they were raiding his Amish farmers over weapons of mass destruction. You know, raw milk and cheese. But what Brad Rogers said is so important. Your local officials can stem the tide of federal overreach, and you can insert governor's overreach, counties' overreach in there, okay? But if they apply just a little backbone in supporting and defending the Constitution. See, I've shown you today what the California Constitution says. And the obligation of that oath to support and defend the California Constitution is right there in writing. We need some people that we've entrusted with the duty to secure our rights to have a backbone instead of a political pole up their butt and do their job. He says, some bloggers and natural food writers have hailed me a hero. I'm no hero. I'm just doing my job. Whether you're a conservative or a liberal, I will be a guardian of the Constitution for you, and I will not stand idly by. Now, this is it. While the rights of my county are trampled, whether by criminals or an overreaching government. This is Marty Gleave. I just taught, I have a class that I teach to sheriffs and deputies because I know what we're taught in the academies, and they're not taught what they need to know about the constitutions. And it's a 3-hour course, and I was invited to the Western Sheriff's Association convention this year, and I got to teach this 3-hour course to the sheriffs of 17 states. And I got to meet Marty Gleave. And he said, I'll deputize every man, woman, and child to stop what's going on. This is your sheriff. Now, I'm going to read this to you because I don't think you're going to be able to read it. But you have to give me just a second to pull it up. Oops, wrong one. Sorry. Too many buttons. Too many different apps. Too many things to look at. Oh, come on. Because the phone knows better than I do. Can you come help me? My husband, everybody. Just hold it for me while I do this. This is important. I want you guys, and I'm sorry it's going to take me a little while to get it for you, but this is very important, and I want you to have it. All right, this is Mike Harrington. Okay, I think I got it now. Thank you, dear. I thought it was going to be harder than that. I spoke too soon. Sorry. Okay. There we go. All right. This is Mike Harrington. He's the sheriff of Chaves County Sheriff's Office in New Mexico. He says, duty as sheriff per the Constitution. Since before the birth of America, the duty of the sheriff has been to secure the rights of the people. This is evidenced by the sheriff's oath of office as a promise to the people to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of New Mexico and defend them, the rights of the people, against all enemies whatsoever. You saw that, right? All enemies, foreign and... The New Mexico Bill of Rights enshrines to every citizen of New Mexico the right that all persons are born equally free and have certain natural, inherent, and inalienable rights, among which are the rights of enjoying and defending life, liberty, of acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and of seeking and obtaining safety and happiness. That no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Private property shall not be taken or damaged for public use without just compensation. Every business in Chaves County is essential when the people are dependent upon that income to provide for themselves, their families. He says it is not the job of the government to provide income to the people, and New Mexico was built upon the principles of private property ownership, hard work, and self-reliance. To say otherwise is simply ridiculous. As a constitutional sheriff, it is my duty and obligation to defend the rights of the people against every and all infringements. He says the New Mexico Constitution establishes strict separation of powers. You heard that in your Constitution, right? Strict separation of powers to ensure the security of the rights of the people, and that the powers of the government of this state are divided into 3 departments, the legislative, executive, and judicial, and no person or collection of persons charged with the exercise of powers properly belonging to one of these departments shall exercise any powers properly belonging to either of the others. Furthermore, the New Mexico Constitution delegates to the legislative branch alone full legislative power for the governor to issue orders with the expectation that they be enforced upon the people is in direct conflict with the Constitution of the state of New Mexico and the most violent defiance of the essential principles of separation of powers. As a constitutional sheriff, it is my duty and obligation to defend the Constitution of the state of New Mexico against all violations and abuses of power. The sheriff is not a hireling of the state. We do not work for the governor or the county, and we are not beholden to any one person for a paycheck. We are direct constitutional representatives of the people. We work for the people and therefore are the highest law enforcement authority in our county. All other law enforcement in the state is subject to the authority of the sheriff within their county. And that authority demands the highest respect for the Constitution and the rights of the people, to which I intend to defend. And he ends his letter like this. He says, the question here today is whether we overturn 244 years of history and duty of the sheriff for a new and radical ideology that replaces the duty of the sheriff to protect the rights of the people in the Constitution of New Mexico with an unconstitutional and unchecked power exercised by a governor that looks more like a monarch than the servant of the people. He said, I will not stand idly by and watch the lives, liberties, and rights of the people of Chavez County of New Mexico violated by unconstitutional and unjust pretended authorities. And that's the duty of your sheriff. Right there. And I couldn't have said it any better myself. Among the natural rights of the people, first life, second liberty, third property, together with the right to support and defend them in the best manner they can. Natural rights. And we will never tamely surrender those liberties nor be easily subdued when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved. I don't know how long I've had with you, probably too long. My watch says it's 10 minutes to midnight, so. Because I'm on Eastern time. But I want to ask you a very important question. How different would your world be today if we'd been teaching this for the last 50 years? So let me ask you a question. Is this the world that you want to pass on to your children and grandchildren? Then stop looking for somebody else to change it. Stop looking for somebody else to change it and start being that change. You see, I didn't fly all the way over here. I've now been up for 18 hours to entertain you, poke fun at your sheriff a little bit, and get your blood pressure up. I came to educate, to ignite, and inspire. Because if you don't leave here changed, I failed. And I just spoke to an empty room. The school system is not the problem. It's not. Our parents are the problem. We've got to stop handing our children over to the government for education and then wondering why our children have fallen in love with government. I have a lady who's a patriot, follows me on Twitter, sent me a message about how distressed she was because she wanted to take her 8-year-old outside. She's like, come on, let's go outside. We've been locked in the house. And the little boy started to cry. He said, Mommy, I don't want to go outside and get sick. You see, the worst form of slavery is the mental slavery we inflict on ourselves because we never get to see the chains. And you can't break free from chains you can't see. I'm here because I want that little boy to be free. I'm here because I have a 14-year-old who will be free or die. Am I right? My son is 14 years old and he will not be a slave. He already knows that. And I don't want him to have to fight for that. Do you? So let's stand up as people together I want you to repeat after me. There's going to be 2 sentences we're going to say. We'll say the first one, and then you repeat, and I'll say the second one, and then you repeat. Are you ready? We will not comply. One more time. We will not comply. We will be free. We will be free. And you don't need to ask anybody's permission to do it because God already created you that way. Thank you guys very much for your time.
Yeah.